This dive computer costs $250. This dive computer costs $1,600. That's almost $1,400 difference. They all do the same thing. With all of these dive computers, they keep you safe as a diver. They give you bottom time, no decompression limits, and they give you your depth you're at. And then some of them does a lot of other things. But what do you need as a diver when buying a dive computer? Because it's so easy to overspend. Now in this video, we'll look at 6 criteria, 6 questions you can also say that you need to ask yourself as a diver before making a decision on which dive computer to get. Let's dive in and take a look at them. Before we dive into the 6 criteria, let's just talk about what a dive computer really is. If you already know, just skip one chapter ahead. A dive computer does a quite simple job. It measures your dive time from you go in to you go out. It measures your depth throughout the dive, and then it gives you your no decompression limit. That's the time you can spend on a certain depth. Now, if you think back from dive planners, if you ever dove with those, before a dive, you calculate what's the depth of this dive, 30 meters, 100 feet, and then how long time do I have at this? At that point, you would get 25 minutes. That's not that long. So when you're using a dive computer, it won't do exactly the same thing. It will actually recalculate throughout the dive. And as you know, most dives has a max depth, but then you change up. You don't spend the entire dive at that depth. You change and you go up slowly, or you move around, or you go deeper than you actually planned, and then it recalculates all of this. And it does that throughout the dive, following the depth and the time spent on that depth, recalculating, giving you your no decompression limit, the time you can stay at that depth. It also, if you go too deep or extend your time too much, give you the time going into deco diving, actually gives you the time it will take for you to go to the surface with all the deco stops you need on that, and tells you when to stop. So if you're not trained for deco diving, don't do it. Stay within your no decompression limit and the depth as well. That's basic what all the dive computers can do. But where the decisions of what do you need in a dive computer comes in or becomes difficult is these dive computers can do all that, but they do so much more as well. So let's dive into those 6 criteria that I think are really important for you as a diver. First up, first criteria I think you need to consider is really the price. How much are you willing to pay? Because as we just talked about, the $250 version of a dive computer can do everything you need within diving, giving you a recreational diver. So it does all that. Now, next up is the dive modes you need to look at. Are you looking for a recreational dive computer, or are you looking for more sophisticated? Then we're going to talk a bit about the sizes, the styles, the differences in how they look and how they make you read that information. We're going to also look at screens in terms of colors, in terms of screen sizes, and in terms of customizations of those screens. And then we're going to talk about usability. How good are they to use for you? Like, how easy are they to navigate around? And then afterwards, we're going to talk about all the extra things, all the other things that they can do. And that's also where a $250 dive computer sets apart, or a $1,600 dive computer sets apart from the $250 dive computer. It might sound a bit overwhelming right now, but don't worry, we'll take each point slowly and just walk you through it. In case you haven't noticed, here at DIVEIN, we test a lot of dive gear, and we want to be giving it away because dive gear deserves to be dived with, and you deserve new dive gear, seriously. So at some point in this video, I'll tell you how you can get your hands on, oh, don't throw this one. At some point in this video, I'll tell you how you can get your hands on some of this dive gear and a lot of the other things that we've been testing. So stay tuned. Now let's get back to the review. Now, first point, or the first criteria is the price. And we split the price into 3 different levels, or 3 different ranges. First budget is from $250 to $500. Mid-range level is $500 to $1,000. And then high end is $1,000 and above, offering you extra features. Let's dive in and take a look at the budget. Budgets, I'll just bring out some of the budget options. Now there's so many. And again, if you haven't seen the top 10 dive computers that we recently put out, try checking that one out, because that will give you a lot of information about what they actually do. Here, we're just going to focus in general of what a dive or budget dive computer can do. They measure depth, no decompression limits, dive time as well, and that's the basics of what they do. Some of them will have some free diving. Oh, one quick point as well. All dive computers that we've seen on the market at the moment are doing nitrox as well. So if that's a thing you're considering diving into, they all do that. So all budgets, all mid-range, all high-end will do nitrox diving as well, up to 40%. And then it actually comes down to how many extra features are you getting. But with the budgets, you aren't actually getting that many. You do get a large, nice screen, rocket dive computer. These are some of the options that we have. They are often used as rental dive computers because they are so big, easy for everybody to read. Replaceable plexi front glass here that takes up all the scratches so you don't break the actual dive computer. Good battery life. You can, in most cases, actually change the battery yourself. Quite easily done for anybody. So and then that will mean that they run for like almost 2 years, and you can bring an extra spare battery in your dive kit. So if it runs out, you can change it no matter where you are. Some of them in the budget range also comes in size styles, which means you can wear it when you're out of the water as well, where this one you would take off as soon as you come up from the water. So that's kind of the basics of what they do. Right now, looking at the mid-range, this is a broader category, you can say. We're getting better displays, we're getting better battery life, rechargeable batteries on a lot of them. We get a lot of different styles in terms of square dive computers, larger screens, watch-sized. Some of them can do above water features. We are also crushing that limit of recreational diving to touch in on some of the technical. And as I talked about in the intro, that's a dive computer that you don't necessarily outgrow, at least not in near future. So looking at a dive computer and looking into the question, do I need a tech dive computer? If you do that, you need to go to the high-end budget. But if you are on that edge, you might want to try it out, you might want to consider it, but you're not there yet. Then the mid-range is a really good one because there's no reason to buy a fully tech dive computer if you're just starting diving. You might end up doing it, but you might also not do it. And you can still, if you buy a dive computer, resell it and then buy a new one at some point in your dive career. We also get a lot of other features like air integration. Some of these has digital compass. Some of them are solar charged as well, giving you a bit extra battery. And then there's a lot of user interface in terms of button push, more buttons, where one button push is a bit more limited. So this is a really nice category to be in because you do get a lot of features. A lot of these features as well, if you are considering, well, do I need air integration? Or do I need technical diving? We'll dive into all of the features that a dive computer needs later on. Now we're just talking about budgets and what you need to consider. Now let's dive into the high-end dive computers. And this is where we're really pushing in towards the technical dive sphere and some of the really ones. Garmin MK3i, that's kind of an dive computer that can do it all. And that's the first one I brought in. That's the $1,600 dive computer. It does everything in terms of technical diving, but we also have other technical dive computers that only does diving. We get better screens, we get more advanced dive computers and more customizations, larger technical screens. Everything, of course, is up here. And then air integration and transmitters. As soon as you're touching in on that, you're kind of pushing with the transmitter, pushing yourself over that budget range of $1,000 if you consider the transmitter's price of around $400 to $500. So that's covering the prices of the dive computers. Now you need to consider how much money do you have to spend, and don't overbuy just because the features sound cool. Ask yourself, do I need it or not? Now let's take a look at the dive modes and what kind of dive modes you need. As a rule of thumb, the more dive modes you put into a dive computer, the more you're going to be paying. And there's no reason to pay for things you aren't going to be using. So if you're not considering technical diving, you don't need to go to the technical high-end dive computers. If you're not going to be using your dive computer out of the water, you don't need to go into the ones that has all the sports mode features in it or the smartwatch features in it. There might also be that you find a dive computer that has some of the features that you want and can do some of the other things. Well, then that's okay to take features that you don't need. But do really think, what do I need? What's my budget? What can I go into? And with this, as soon as you're touching in, as I just talked about with the budgets, technical diving, you are putting the prices quite high in most of the dive computers. When we're talking about diving, algorithms is an important thing to come into. A lot of these dive computers are using what's called the Bullman 16C algorithm with gradient factors. That's the standard that most of them are using. Some of the budget ones are using a dive algorithm called RGBM. That's a bit more conservative. Now thinking that all the technical dive computers, or most of the technical dive computers and technical divers, swear to the Bullman 16C. So that will keep you safe and sound, and it's a good dive computer. Gradient factors means that you can actually change a bit in terms of how conservative it is, or you can add deep stops. If you don't know what that is, you don't need it, and just skip on. Now, RGBM going to give you a bit less dive time, so you might be losing a bit of bottom time at some point doing some of the dives. Is that something most new divers are going to notice? No. Most vacation divers or people diving 1 or 2, 3, 4 times a year? No. Some of these dive computers can do a lot of things above water as well, so they have sports or smartwatch features. That's the Apple Watch Ultra or the Garmin MK3i or Phoenix 8 or the Sunto Ocean. So these have above water activities like sports tracking, health data, Apple Pay, Garmin Pay, so you can use these for your everyday life, and you can use them for diving as well. But if that's not what you're going to be using, then there's no reason to pay for that. Then there's plenty of other options. Also, watch size options that you can use for diving and leave it with your dive kit. In terms of style and screen, we have 3 options. We have the standard square. It's becoming more and more popular. Then we have the small watch size, either round or square. And then we have the large puck size as well. So which one is really up to a preference of what you like. Puck sizes, large round are really good for rentals because they are cheaper in most cases, cost efficient for the manufacturers, keeping the prices down. Screen though, because it's nice and big, comparing that to same budget but watch style is both more expensive, but you also get a smaller screen. In this case, the screen is nice and large, making it easier to read. But as we mentioned earlier, because it's still not a color display, it's still more difficult than if you are getting large square size color display. Watch style is smaller. You can wear it every day, which means you can wear it between dives as well. Or when you're sitting at the table doing logbooks with your buddies later on, you have it right there. You don't need to go and pick it up. The small watch size is also watches you don't need to wear every day. So it's not only the smartwatch and sport watch features. We also have dive computers that only does diving, but it's still within that range of size. It will do watch when you're wearing it every day. Then there's a third option or a fourth option. That's a console that's attached to your high pressure hose. So it's attached to your regulator, giving you your air or all that information on your console. So instead of a pressure gauge, you actually have a dive computer there. Of course, giving you your air on that and giving you dive time in terms of that, similar to air integration that we're going to cover later in this video. Personally, I don't like these ways because I don't like having to take this up to look at my dive computer. I like having it on my wrist so I can see it all the time. But there are some people that swear to it. There's also dive centers that use it for rental because of the advantage that they don't lose it because it's attached to the regulators. If that's a thing you would consider, look into that. I'm not a fan personally. Now, in terms of the screens and the sizes, it also comes into the next point, which is the screen and the readings of them. Now, all of these have different screens. We have AMOLED, we have LCD, we have monochrome screens, we have really super bright screens, and we have less good screens, to be honest. Some of the monochromes are more difficult to read, especially in high bright lighting. Some of the other ones, the AMOLED screens, are so easy to read, even in super bright sunny surface with sun reflecting on the water. You can still read all of the information. Even at depth, really dark, you can still read it. A lot of these newer dive computers also have screen bright settings, so you can actually take it down from bright to medium to low. And that works really well if you're diving into dark places and you don't want that bright light kind of dimming your sights of it. Now, in terms of that, what you need to consider in terms of the screen is actually how well can you read it? What do you need as a diver? Because for example, I have pretty okay eyesight. I can still see all the information on this, so I technically don't need more than that. If you have problems with your vision, going up to a larger color display screen will do a lot in terms of that. So you can read everything. Usability, user-friendliness of a diving computer is a super important thing to know in. How easy is it for you to navigate your diving computer, change settings, or use it underwater, know where the information is? None of these dive computers have different ways of doing that. There's also how do you navigate it in terms of button push. We got the 1-button push. Some of these will do 2-button push, 3-button push, 4-button push, 5-button push. There's endless options of how many buttons you need. And then it's what do you like? 1-button push, in my opinion, is difficult because you have one click to change the menu, hold and click and hold to select the menu. I like the 4-button push because you got one menu to select, one to go back, one to go up and down. That's easy for me to navigate. Every diver is different, and every dive computer is different as well, because some of these with 2-button pushes makes it super easy to move around in it, and some of them with 4-button push will still make it difficult to navigate around in. And that's some of them will use abbreviations of the word, so they will write in LOG, lock. Is it a dive lock? Is it anything else lock? You don't really know. And some of the other dive computers will write exactly which menu point are you at and what are you going to be changing, what are you going to be doing, what are you going to be viewing as well, making it easier as well to use. Then there's the frequency of use Are you only using a dive computer a few times a year, then it's always going to be difficult to navigate. That's an important thing to understand. And setting it to nitrox might be a hassle. You even need to go do a Google search before you actually know how to do it. That's where all of the smartwatch features come in handy, because then you're actually using your dive computer every day and you know how to use it. Then it's so easy to use it underwater as well. That's a really way in of what you need and how to do it. Also, an important thing to do before you go on a dive trip is sit down with a dive computer and get to know it again if it's been some time since you've been diving. Also, coming into how bulky is it to use, do you find it easy to get to coming into the consoles as well? If you have to pull it up and push the buttons, is that too difficult? Well, then don't consider that. All right, now we're at that point in the video where you get the chance to win some of the dive gear that we've been testing here at DIVEIN and we can't use ourselves. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, subscribe to our newsletter. I'll leave the link down in the description below. This is how you find out if you're the one we picked as the winner. And then lastly, leave a comment to this video telling us what you think is the most important feature when buying a dive computer. What's the most important thing you're looking for when buying the dive computer? That's it, let's get back to the review. The 6 criteria is all the extra things that we haven't covered or covered briefly in it, talking about air integration, battery charging, dive log options, integrated compass, smartwatch features, anything you can think about. And then ask yourself in every point we go through here, well, do I need it or not? First off, air integration. It's a super nice feature to have. What does it actually mean? Well, you put a transmitter on your regulator, and when you turn on your air, you get all of your air information straight on the dive computer. Air integration is wireless, which means you don't need that hose connected. You don't need to look at your SPD. You get all that information on your dive computer. It also means you get a bit of extra data on most of the dive computers because they will give you remaining time based on your air consumption. So you'll actually get, of course, the no decompression limits, but that doesn't really mean anything if you're low on air. So it'll give you that. You know, on this depth, with the current air you have left in your tank, you got 20 minutes left. And you can know this if you're considering doing a navigation or if you should turn back. So it's really nice feature to have. It's not something you will ever need because you can always just look at that, but it's a nice feature. The cons of it is, of course, the extra cost of this. So you do put on both the extra price of air integration, but also that extra price of the transmitter. And some of these use battery that you also need to consider changing or having spare batteries in. Digital compass is some of what the higher end dive computers is also offering. Digital compass is, again, a nice feature, not a need to have feature, because you can always just use a regular compass. But it does give a lot of extra. I find myself using it quite a lot when I'm at new places. A dive leader or dive buddy says, you know, dive sites is in that direction. I point out, I make a marking on the dive computer in the compass, and then I don't use it anymore. I dive down, and then at some point I'm like looking around, well, are we on track or are we off track? I take up my dive computer, look at the compass, then it will have that marking in, and it will actually help me direct that course of heading. So I can do that. And when we're navigating back as well, the course is set, so I know I just need to turn 180 degrees. Some of these dive computers will even have a menu point you can choose into and say, set reciprocal headings, and it will turn 180, and then you have a new heading going back home. Really nice feature to have in. It means you always have your dive compass with you. A thing that is not always for all divers. So it's a nice thing, again, not a need to have in. Dive logs, of course, that's a thing you need. All of these dive computers here will log the information on your dive, so it's something you can access. Then there is a difference in terms of how many dives they are logging. Are they logging 50? Are they logging 5? Are they logging 1,000? And how do you integrate this with a smartphone, for example? Is it Bluetooth connected? Some of these smartwatches will connect wirelessly and you won't even see it. They will even have really good apps where you can take a look at your logs. They will show you the whole depth contour of the dive. They will give you the dive profile. Some of these will even have GPS points of entry and exit, so you can retrack all of this. Some of them also have 3D mapping of what you've been doing on this dive, of how you've been moving around. We even have 3D maps of the dive sites as well. So there's plenty of really cool options of some of these more high-end dive computers that you can take a look at. And dive logging is really nice thing, and especially finding back as well to that dive site you've been at before. We're sharing your logs with your dive buddies or in a dive community that some of these companies are also building up around their apps. Batteries, rechargeable batteries versus user replaceable batteries. If you've been using an old-fashioned dive computer back in the days, you had to send in your dive computer to have someone change it and test it and send it back to you. That was a quite pricey thing. Most budget dive computers are usually replaceable. You screw it off, you change the battery, you might change the O-ring, and then you're good to go. And you can even bring a spare battery. Some of the higher end technical dive computers are using a AA battery. Really good for anyone diving remote places, because no matter where in the world you are, you can always get a AA battery if you're running low, or you can just bring one in spare. And then a lot of the newer ones are rechargeable. You got a wireless charging pad, you put them on, or some of these you have a small clip you attach it to, and then you charge it via your standard wall socket. You put it in, and then you're charging, and you're good to go for several hours. There's also taking into account how much battery they have in. When we did our full test, some of these were doing dive times of 175 hours. Some of these were doing 9 hours of dive time. And then throughout the day of what you're using, if you're using the more smartwatch feature dive computers, they use a lot of power to a lot of other things, so you get less battery. Features to use above water as well is the thing to consider if you're going to be using it for anything else other than diving. Personally, I find it nice to have a dive computer I can use when diving and use above water as well. It means I always have it on me. When I'm traveling and I'm not planning on diving, it's not that often, but it do happen sometimes. And if I do see something I want to go diving at, I can still go in and rent some dive gear, and then I still have my own dive computer that I'm used to using. And that's a really nice feature for me. But it also means you can track sports things. You can track all your daily activities. They do GPS tracking for speed, for anything that you really need in terms of sports features. And that's a nice thing to have, but it's not a need to have for a diver as well. Now, this was all the things I think is important for you when you're looking for a dive computer. All of these things is things you need to consider. Do you have one thing that you like to is this a thing to consider as well? Leave the comment down below if there's a thing you think I'm missing, or if there's a thing you would like me to answer on. I will get back to you on the comments as well. Otherwise, if you're unsure of which dive computer to choose, you can ask in the comments as well, or check out the full in-depth top 10 review we've done, where we tested all of these dive computers side by side, the most thorough test we've done so far in terms of dive computers, and the most thorough test I think anyone done so far. That was me. This is what to consider when buying a dive computer. I'm Tom from DIVEIN. Have a good day.